So this video is going to be about a combination of adapter and lens for the Micro Four Thirds system that I really like. It's the equivalent to the 7-14 Panasonic, and if, like me, you really want that lens or you've wanted a similar lens, you know that you're going to have to pay quite a hefty price for it. At least £400–500 even if you buy it second hand. But this combination will give you the same focal length as the Panasonic 7-14 or the Olympus 7-14 f2.8, but it will give you an f2.5 aperture. So this video is going to be about the Sigma 10-20 DC HSM f3.5 paired with a Viltrox M.2 EF MFT adapter. It's a good combination, just stick with me. So here we are shooting with the Sigma 10-20 with the Viltrox speed booster attached. And as you can see, it's a very good vlogging lens, but there are a couple of things that you should know about this lens before you start using it. The first is that the speed booster might not necessarily be calibrated to be working with this lens. I think most people buy this speed booster to work with the Sigma 18-35 f1.8, which is a great lens. And if you do have this speed booster, it should definitely be on your shopping list. But out of the box, it's not really calibrated for this lens. So what you have to do is you have to actually twist the lens element by hand until it is in the right place for it to focus correctly for this ultra wide angle lens. So I found I had to turn it quite a few times, probably 2.5 times, something like that. At one point it actually got stuck and I thought that was as far as it went, and I put it back on the camera and I tried it and everything was still out of focus. So I had to keep at it, and it did turn around eventually, another turn and a bit, and then everything was fine. And now the lens is actually sharper than it was than when I was using it with the dumb adapter. Now that could be down to my adapter not really being calibrated correctly, or some things are just not in the right place. So, but I found with the dumb adapter that f3.5, which is the maximum aperture for this, everything was really soft. Putting it on the Viltrox adapter and even stopping down to f2.5 now, which this lens is now capable of thanks to the adapter, thanks to the speed booster, and things are much sharper even at f2.5. Right now I'm shooting at f6.3 and 60 frames per second. So I've got quite a deep depth of field because I want to make sure everything's in focus, but you can get quite a shallow depth of field at f2.5. So first impression is very happy with everything. A lot of people have ultra wide angle lenses that they're using for vlogging, but they forget to turn off the stabilizer in the camera. This lens doesn't have stabilization in the lens, it's just purely in the camera. But if you keep stabilization on with an ultra wide angle lens, it's like the camera doesn't really, it kind of tries to overcompensate, and you end up with this. Just a wobbly effect everywhere you look, and it just really doesn't look great. I see a lot of people doing that mistake online. The thing is, with the ultra wide angle lens, it's wide enough that you don't really see very much handshake. So, I mean, the setup I have at the moment, I'm literally just holding it on a tripod grip and that's it, and it's fairly smooth. If I turn on stabilization, then things get a bit messy. So. So let's talk about the image quality. Well, it's not exactly what you would call top tier image quality. I mean, it's good, you get excellent sharpness in the center, and that is from f3.5 all the way down. It stays razor sharp. But the very edges of the frame are a completely different story. They're very soft and have a lot of chromatic aberration going through it. You can get rid of the chromatic aberration if you stop down a bit, but the softness never really seems to go. Now, this might be a little bit of a problem if you want this lens for landscape photography, but if you want it for something like vlogging, it shouldn't really worry you at all. You're going to be in the center of the frame, you're probably going to be holding the camera yourself, and the edges just don't really matter. A lot of that softness is gone when you zoom into 20mm, but the edges still are not as sharp as you'd want them to be. Of course, the added bonus of having the speed booster is the extra speed. So zoom into 20mm, and with that 2.5 aperture, you have a relatively fast, not quite portrait lens, but still good for some nice portrait style shots. Let's talk about the autofocus, because being such a short throw, it is fairly quick, but it is noisy and clunky, and it shakes the camera in your hand around as it's doing it. I mean, if you just have the camera on and you're holding it in your hand, the camera will continuously be hunting and searching. I mean, Micro Four Thirds lenses do this anyway, but they're silent and you don't notice it at all. But with this thing, you feel it clunking around in your hand so much that you have to reach for the autofocus switch and just turn it off. You know what I love about cheap lenses is when you get really good results out of cheap lenses. And I've got to say, I've been doing all right with this little combination. It's so much more satisfying to know that you, on a budget with those flaws that your lens has or your equipment has, it may not be the fastest aperture and it may not be the sharpest, but you've still managed to get something beautiful out of it. And that's what I love about this little combination here. I think overall, if you want to try this focal length, if you were thinking about buying the 7-14 Olympus or perhaps even the new Leica 8-18, well, it's not really new anymore, but if you were thinking to spending a big deal of cash on a nice new ultra wide angle zoom lens, but you wanted to try out that focal length first, see if it fits into your routine, then it's definitely worth picking this up. I mean, even if it's just for the adapter alone. The adapter alone will unlock the vast array of EF lenses that there are out there, and there are some stunners out there. Definitely worth playing around with them. Knowing that you're going to get the autofocus and all the features that you're supposed to get, rather than having to adapt with some silly adapter. The lens itself, yeah, it doesn't have the best image quality. It definitely does have some flaws to it. One flaw that I didn't mention actually, but you probably noticed already, was the mad way that it just constantly flares all the time. If you point this towards the sun, it's going to flare, and it's going to flare fairly big. Yeah, I got mine for a bit of a bargain. It cost me £99, as I mentioned before. But I mean, the glass itself isn't in perfect condition. There are a few marks to the coating, so you can kind of see it in a lot of frames, especially when you get a bit of flare onto the lens. Because the ultra wide angle lens can focus so closely, it does tend to pick up any marks or imperfections on the front element. And you can definitely see that here. But shop around and you can get a really good one for 120, 150 max, you know, boxed. I wouldn't pay any more than 150 boxed and in mint condition, but it's definitely worth having a look around. 250 altogether for the combination. Try it out. If you like it, you might like it and decide you want to stay with this combination and not bother spending the extra money. So granted, it's not the sharpest combination in the world. You're going to get some softness on the edges, but I am pleased with the center sharpness on this lens, and it gets you some dramatic shots. That 7mm is just a must-have focal length, in my opinion. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button and that subscribe button. I'll see you in the next one.